Impact Wrestling. So we have some interesting news when it comes to last night's episode of Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Now, obviously, it was arguably the biggest episode of Impact Wrestling ever on Access TV. Certainly Impact Wrestling's biggest episode they've probably broadcast in the last, 5 or 6 years, maybe? So maybe even going back to the days on Spike TV. It was a massive episode of Impact Wrestling on Access TV. It involved the first appearance of AEW World Champion Kenny Omega with Impact Wrestling, and the first appearance since Omega won the AEW World Championship last week in the controversial main event of AEW Dynamite, the special Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite, where Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis assisted Kenny Omega in victory and opened up this possibility of a working relationship with AEW and Impact Wrestling going forward. So going into the show, knowing that we were going to have an appearance by AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, there was high expectations about what we'll deliver in terms of the ratings on for Impact Wrestling on Access TV. And looks to me like Impact Wrestling are going to be very, very happy when it comes to the figures coming out of the show. Now, right now, of course, we don't have the TV ratings. Usually they take 24 hours to come out. A lot of the time when it comes to Impact Wrestling, the ratings are very difficult to find because they don't register on the top 150 cable rankings, which is where you get the TV ratings for when it comes to Showbuzz Daily and websites like that. Nevertheless, what is a good indicator of the success of last night's show is Impact Wrestling smashing the previous Twitch record. Now, if you're not familiar with this, Impact Wrestling, when they air on Access TV, because obviously, especially in America, but around the world, not everywhere has Access TV, so what they do, they also air simultaneously the episode of Impact Wrestling on Twitch, and Impact Wrestling absolutely smashed their previous Twitch record, hitting over 50,000 viewers during the show. Now, the anticipation of seeing Kenny Omega and the crossover with AEW and Impact Wrestling absolutely paid off for Impact Wrestling's numbers on Twitch. Impact Wrestling broke viewership records on Tuesday, hitting 52,469 during the final segment featuring Kenny Omega and Don Callis. Just as the show went off the air, this actually rose to 55,396 viewers all tuning in at the same time on Twitch. The show immediately, and before it even started, broke the 2020 viewership record as over 11,000 viewers were waiting 5 minutes before the show even started. When the show did eventually go live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 25,000 viewers had tuned in. When AEW's paid advertisement featuring AEW President Tony Khan and AEW broadcaster Tony Schiavone aired, 40,000 viewers were locked in watching the show at that period of time. And finally, the show cracked the 50,000 viewer mark just before the final segment between the new AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and the Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis. Now, less than 20 minutes into the show, Impact Wrestling also tweeted. It wasn't just the records they were breaking on Twitch. They were trending number 3 during the show as well. That was only 20 minutes into the show. Impact had already doubled the all-time viewership record on Twitch and was a top 5 channel on Twitch during last night's show. Now, according to Twitch Tracker, Impact peaked at 3,100 viewers for last Tuesday's episode. Impact's previous peak numbers of viewers was 15,449 on April 6, 2018, which was Impact versus Lucha Underground during WrestleMania weekend. Look at that. Honestly, look at that. So the previous peak was 15,449. That was their peak. Last night, their peak was 55,396. That's just on Twitch. So if that's just on Twitch, what does that mean for the ratings? Well, as I mentioned previously, we're going to find out relatively soon. I would assume at the end of today or sometime this afternoon when it comes to the United States time, we're going to find out what Impact Wrestling have done in the ratings. If the Twitch indication and trending number 3, they didn't mention if that's worldwide or in the US, regardless, it looks like Impact Wrestling on Access TV has probably done some big ratings last night, which if that is the case, I predicted going into the show that Access TV was going to see their highest ratings ever from Impact Wrestling since they debuted with them. I think that's probably still going to be the case. Looking at the numbers on Twitch, the fact that they, nearly quadrupled? I mean, a bit less, but they nearly quadrupled their highest ever peak on Twitch. Are they going to do the same in the ratings? I mean, you can't say not. You can't say they won't. I mean, that is a strong indication that a lot of people on a variety of platforms were watching or talking about Impact Wrestling on Access TV last night. So I'm expecting huge numbers. Now, am I expecting numbers to beat NXT and AEW? Of course not. The availability of Access TV is so much lower than TNT and the USA Network and Fox or anything like that. So we're not going to get that bigger numbers. We're not going to get the numbers that Impact Wrestling did on Spike TV at their peak either. One, it's just, again, exposure, and two, television has changed since then. Nevertheless, for Impact to what they're usually used to when it comes to their programming, I have no doubt in my mind, considering those record numbers on Twitch and trending on Twitter, I think they're going to have done big numbers. Again, once they do get released, we'll cover it probably in a video tomorrow. And even if the ratings aren't that high when it comes to the TV deal, I think at this point, the fact that they beat their record on Twitch, the fact that they were trending on social media on Twitter, it's already worth it, isn't it? It's already worth it if you're Impact Wrestling. I felt personally that the crossovers that we saw absolutely delivered. I enjoyed the paid advertisement from Tony Khan. I enjoyed the Kenny Omega Don Callis main event segment. I enjoyed the tease of Rich Swann not being able to get into the parking lot because the real world champion had blocked it off. I enjoyed that. And I think when it comes to Impact Wrestling, it's obvious to me that people tuned in because of the AEW effect, right? Because of the angle, the way that Dynamite went off the air last week. People tuned in to see what presence AEW was going to have on the show, but Impact Wrestling kept them. And I think that's the important factor there. People tuned in for AEW, but they stayed for Impact. And Kenny Omega being in the final segment, in the main event segment, to me made the most sense. It built suspense, and when you build suspense like that, the peak viewers grew throughout the show, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen a lot of the time when it comes to pro wrestling. Look at Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw goes like that. It goes down throughout the show. It starts off high and ends up very low. Sometimes it's the same for SmackDown. So to actually build up this peak throughout the show, even on Twitch, are we going to see the same thing when it comes to the ratings? We'll have to see. I'm sure we'll see the Impact Wrestling ratings. As I mentioned, usually we don't see them because they don't crack the top cable 150. But I think at this point, they're guaranteed to. They're guaranteed to. Last week, Impact was in the cable 150, and we actually spoke about the ratings we got reports about the ratings for a very rare occasion. So I have no doubt that we're going to see record ratings for Access TV in terms of Impact Wrestling. No doubt about it. And look, it's exactly what Impact wanted. It's exactly what Impact wanted when it came out of this AEW and Impact relationship. And why did we get that? How did we get that? We got that because of Don Callis. People have saying, well, what does Don Callis offer? Because there's been these rumors, of course, that Don Callis could leave Impact Wrestling soon and go to AEW, become Kenny Omega's full-time on-screen manager. That's what he offers. He offers a relationship, an appearance that got record numbers on Twitch and trended on Twitter and potentially got record ratings for them on Access TV. The talent involved in Impact Wrestling and AEW, the companies, the fans, we should all be excited. Now, depending on this number on Access TV, does it make Impact a major player? No, I don't think it makes them the level of WWE or AEW or New Japan or anything like that. It's certainly a well-needed shot in the arm, though, when it comes to Impact. It certainly puts them in the conversation of relevance again. For a while, as I mentioned, for several years, this was a dead brand. It was a dead company that people had written off, they'd stopped watching, and this is, a shot of adrenaline. This is a shot of adrenaline, and Impact needs to make sure that these record numbers that tuned in last night stay going forward. Does that mean by keeping AEW on board, or does it mean just by delivering a great product every time people tune in? I think it's probably a bit of both. It certainly helps elevate them. It's obviously this crossover already for Impact. We'll wait and see the outcomes for AEW. Has been hugely successful. No doubt it's the biggest show that they've done on Access TV. And you have to look at Impact Wrestling at this point. What a 2020 they've had, realistically. What a year they've had. And 2020 is only going to get bigger for them. We've talked about it several times on this channel, but the momentum that they've built this year and the success that they've had, it just continues to build, starting at really at Slammiversary. Slammiversary was the big turning point. It was a huge show, trended worldwide, trended in the United States, got all these ex-WWE stars to come over, and since then, they've just built. They've just absolutely built. Momentum, trending, good numbers on Access TV for them, talent, wanting to come to Impact Wrestling, building the reputation of an environment people want to work in. There have been issues. Of course, the testing issue is a massive issue I think they need to address. But the momentum and success, 2020 is the best year Impact Wrestling have had in a long time. And quite frankly, it's been capped off with this AEW Impact Wrestling crossover. So very excited to see the numbers. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's going to be a big story and we'll talk about it here on the channel. What I did want to talk about as well, since we're talking about the success of last night's episode of Impact Wrestling, was the spoilers. And now what do we mean by the spoilers? Well, prior to the show going on the air, this was about 4 or 5 hours before Impact went on the air on Access TV. Spoilers started to come out about the specific AEW and Impact Wrestling segments that were to air on the show. Now, how did these people get these spoilers, you ask? Wow, this is what Access TV and Impact Wrestling do. Every week, they do it every week, they send screeners to journalists. Now, what are screeners? Screeners essentially are the entire episode of Impact Wrestling that is going to air that week because it's pre-taped. They send to these journalists. Now, they send it to these journalists so the journalists can watch the episode before it airs on Access TV. Any relevant or big story or even the results, they can type up. When they type them up, they can get them ready, hit draft, and then they can publish them as soon as Impact Wrestling goes off the air, because at that period of time, most people are searching for Impact Wrestling than they would for the entire week, right? So once you get those, if they publish those stories at the right time, once Impact has just gone off the air, more people will visit the website, more people ultimately will be talking about Impact, maybe more people will be inclined to tune in next week. That's how the relationship works with Impact and pro wrestling websites, right? And just other websites that cover pro wrestling. And they always do this, and there's always a strict embargo, being that you can't publish these spoilers, you can't talk about what's happened in the show until the show goes off the air, right? So they did this for last night's episode of Impact Wrestling, featuring all of these segments with the AEW president, Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone, and most importantly, the main event segment with Don Callis and Kenny Omega, the new AEW World Champion. What did the websites do? They ignored some websites, not the majority of them, but some websites posted these spoilers of the main event segment with Don Callis and Kenny Omega and the segment with Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone. And these websites posted this, and they published all of the details about the AEW segments and basically the reason why people were tuning into the show. They posted all of the spoilers about those segments. First of all, and this absolutely outraged me, so this is why I wanted to talk about it. First of all, they obviously don't understand what an embargo is. It means you can't post it. It blocks you from doing something. It blocks you from talking about something. They just ignore that. And it's just low. It's just really low. And I thought that was a pure attempt at greed, and that was just an attempt to be first, and they wanted to ruin it for the fans and ruin it for other websites and journalists, because that's what it does. It ruins it for the fans because you're posting spoilers about something they're excited to see and they don't want to see going into it. They don't want to know the details. You don't want to know what happens in the Marvel movie before you go and watch it. And it ruins it for the websites and the journalists because they've built up this trust with Impact Wrestling. You can trust us. We won't post details until the show's gone off the air. We can be in this reciprocal relationship, a professional relationship, and we can work together and try and build Impact Wrestling. It's ruined it for that because how can Impact trust pro wrestling websites now? And this is why wrestling companies have such an issue with wrestling journalism. Not the mainstream journalism on big websites and big industry entertainment industries. This is why wrestling companies have an issue with pro wrestling specific journalism. Because they're piranhas. It's the biggest show of the year for Impact. It's arguably their biggest show in 5 or 6 years. The company and Access TV have been gracious enough to give you a screener to immediately write news because they know people are going to read it, people are going to be talking about Impact Wrestling. It's a win-win. You get viewers to your website and your articles, and we get people talking about Impact Wrestling. Then you release these spoilers from the screeners that we sent you as scoops or sources, like you have any insider information in the company, which you don't. And this is the problem here, right? This is the problem. I guess it's wider than pro wrestling journalism. It's a problem in journalism, but it certainly is a problem in pro wrestling journalism. This desire to be first. Oh, we were first. We broke that news. We broke that story. It was an exclusive to us. Yeah, well, you were first last night because Impact gave you the information, but you'll never be first again, because they won't send you screeners again. And it just ruins it for fans. It ruins the enjoyment of the show because we knew what was going to happen. It was difficult to avoid it on social media. And it ruins it for the journalists. And they try and spoil the experience, the enjoyment and the anticipation of a big monumental event for fans. Fans that have stuck around and watched Impact Wrestling for the last however many years, while many people are turned off. They'd stayed with them. It was a big moment for them. They were excited, and then what happens? It all gets spoiled because people start posting spoilers from the screeners because they need to be first. And I guess the response people might say is, well, should have Impact sent the screener out? Maybe not. But they do it every week and nobody posts anything. But because you get some idiot sites who want to get reads because no one else reads their website, they break the embargo. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And by the way, screeners aren't a thing specific to the pro wrestling industry. Screeners go out in the movie industry, the TV business, the entertainment industry, quite frankly. Nobody breaks the embargo because they would be blacklisted. They would never be able to write for a publication again. They'd never be allowed to get any screeners. They wouldn't be allowed to attend any entertainment events or anything like that. Critics go to watch films in the movies all the time. and there's an embargo. You can't talk about what happens in this film. You can't release your review until it comes out or on a certain day. And they don't break that embargo because they would be blacklisted. They would never be able to go and see these films again. They'd never be employed by a website or a magazine or whatever to write about movies because they're not supposed to break the embargo. These websites that have done it, and I'm not going to say who broke this embargo because they're not worth the time, they should be blacklisted. They should be ashamed. That's not journalism. That's not journalism. That's taking advantage of a company that wants to actually have a good relationship and help pro wrestling journalists. And you always have this discussion of why does WWE give all their big stories? Why do they give them to Sports Illustrated and ESPN and all those big names in the PR industry and in the journalism industry? Well, because they can be trusted. They've got a reputation. They're safe. Yes, they have a wide reach, but the biggest thing is they're safe. They can be trusted. They're not going to break embargoes. They're not going to break embargoes before they're meant to. They're safe. And I thought it was an absolute disgrace when I saw that. I mean, they should be ashamed. This desire to be first, despite factual accuracy on some occasion. Now, we talk about these reports on the channel, and we talk about all reports. Why? Because the reason I like to talk about all these different spectrum on these reports is because eventually we're going to find out who's BSing and who's not. Right? We've seen it with Sting over the last 7 days. Sting, he signed with AEW, right? Made his debut last week. Sting, definitely not going to wrestle. Report, he's definitely not going to wrestle. He's definitely not going to take bumps. Report out yesterday, Sting's going to wrestle. You're just saying both ends of the argument there. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then they're saying it with AEW and Impact, there's no relationship. It's a one-off. It's not that intertwined. Don Callis is leaving. Then there's some relationship. I don't know. They're not talking. It's a one-off. It's not a one-off. These are just journalist opinions at this point. But for some reason, because their desire to be first, or the desire to get reads, or the desire to build up their credibility, they pass off their own opinions as sources, or scoops, or insider information, or whatever. I share my opinions on this channel. I share my predictions of what I think is going to happen. And that's the key thing there, of what I think is going to happen. But I don't pass it off as facts, or sources, or scoops, or anything like that, because it's just that. It's my opinion. And that's the difference in these kind of situations. And it's so frustrating, it's so infuriating, but we'll stop there because I could rant about this for 45 minutes. Anyway, when it comes to the success of last night's episode of Impact Wrestling on Access TV, I'm sure we'll find out about the ratings soon. Don Callis and Kenny Omega, they're on AEW Dynamite tonight. To me, the relationship between AEW Dynamite and Impact Wrestling going forward, it's far more intertwined than I think was previously reported, and it doesn't look to be over yet. It certainly doesn't look to be a one-off. That's my opinion, though. It's not a source. It's not insider information. I'm certainly not going to pass it off as that. But, of course, congratulations to Impact and AEW. Of course, to Impact because of the great numbers they did last night, and to AEW and Impact because there's so much buzz and people are talking about it a lot at the moment. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the record numbers that Impact Wrestling seemingly has done last night for their episode on Access TV? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, NXT, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Get involved with the community. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.